What's up, Star Wars fans? Welcome back to the Hills Maniacs YouTube channel. Today, we will be reviewing the first movie in each of the Star Wars trilogies. The first movie we're going to talk about is obviously The Phantom Menace, as it is considered episode 1 in the Star Wars saga.
Chronologically.
Yes, chronologically, it is considered episode 1 in the Star Wars saga. So basically, we meet characters, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who end up being main characters, at least for this movie. And the main villain of the first one that we're supposed to know of, at least,
Is Jar Jar Binks.
is clearly it is Darth Maul, who ends up getting killed by the end of the movie.
Yeah, but the character that we all want to hate is Jar Jar Binks because, let's face it, he's very annoying in that
Yes,
movie.
we don't talk about Jar Jar Binks.
Jar Jar Binks.
No, we don't talk about Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
So I mean, overall, the movie, other than the whole pod racing sequence with Anakin,
Yeah.
you know, when because they meet Anakin Skywalker as a young boy who, if you're a fan of Star Wars, you know Anakin Skywalker turns into Darth Vader later on in the series.
Mm-hmm.
They meet Anakin as a young boy, and this is kind of where they bring him back to the Jedi Temple and start his Jedi training, and then we get farther into his story later on. And the whole pod racing sequence, if you've seen this movie, really could have been cut out.
Yeah, like it didn't.
They didn't need that.
It didn't really need to happen, and the movie could have been a lot shorter. Like, I just find it convenient too that they just happened to run into Anakin, and because he's a major point of the whole series, basically. And because they crash land there?
Or their ship ran out of their ship was damaged, so they had to repair it. But they didn't have money or anything to buy the parts. Because all they had was Republic credits, and Republic credits are no good on Tatooine, apparently, according to Watto.
Watto?
Yes. Watto.
Watto. There we go.
But, so they had to enter this pod race with the help of Anakin, and get the prize money so that they could buy the parts they need, so that they could get back to Coruscant, which is the main Republic center. Basically, the entire planet is a city.
I mean, that's what the whole pod race was meant to be, but like they didn't really. I mean, they could have like cut that out, but still, I guess it was just to show how good of a pilot Anakin was for later on in the series. But I mean, as an introductory though, like it wasn't that bad. I guess like, it wasn't that bad of a movie. Like, yeah, we weren't a fan of Jar Jar, but I thought Jar Jar was kind of funny. But
I mean, had they kind of done something more with Jar Jar, maybe it would have.
It just seemed weird to introduce him
because he didn't really do anything.
He didn't do anything important.
And
until the third movie.
Darth Jar Jar has been a theory for a while, and I kind of agree with it that he was secretly a Sith Lord the whole time, but that's another topic. Overall though, at least of the prequel trilogies, I didn't mind Phantom Menace. It wasn't my favorite of 1, 2, and 3, but it was definitely better than some of the other crap we've been getting.
And if you think back to it, like even me, like I remember basically everything that happened in the movie because it didn't seem like too complicated of like a plot and stuff. Like everything was just straightforward pretty much. But yeah, like you said too, like I think that was. I'd put this one at like the second best of the prequel trilogy. I'll tell you when we actually get to the other movies and later videos. I'll tell you which one I think was actually the best of the prequel trilogy. But in terms of comparing it to, it's a good start. It was a good like origin story in the whole series and stuff. But now we'll get into the second trilogy, which would be episode 4, 5, and 6. So episode 4 would be the origin story technically for Luke Skywalker, which I mean I like this one actually better than the Phantom Menace, but I think with the Phantom Menace, they did a good, like, they didn't need to have that movie, but they, it was good to have it in there so we could get an origin for Darth Vader. But for this one, it felt a lot better because it was like there's a mystery surrounding Luke Skywalker, where he came from, like who his father or who his parents were, because he doesn't know who they are. He's living with his Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and things like that. And he doesn't know. So there's kind of that mystery shrouded there, like what's going on? Why is he suddenly being pulled into all this stuff with, the Jedi and Ben Kenobi and everything else?
Right.
So I kind of like that aspect of it. I mean, what did you think, like?
I mean,
when you first saw it,
if you look at A New Hope, because it came out in '77, and it was actually the first Star Wars movie ever released.
Yeah.
So for what it was back then, with nobody having this origin story of Anakin Skywalker, you didn't know who Vader was.
Mm-hmm.
And when Darth Vader comes busting through the door on the Tantive 4 at the beginning, and he's dressed in all black, and he's got the stormtroopers with him, and he's looking for Leia, and the voice of James Earl Jones just comes blaring out onto, like, I could imagine if I had, like, seen that one first, like, or had been alive when that one came out, like, how cool that would have been to see for the first time, But even watching it now, like, I still get, like, goosebumps when I watch that.
Yeah, that's a
Vader
really good opening
awesome.
scene. Yeah, that's a really, like, tense opening scene because it's like, oh, well, this is the bad guy. They usually you start off movies with the good guy and then introduce, their whole thing.
Well, and I like how they started it off. You look at the Phantom Menace. It started off with two people on a ship. And the ship kind of has to land so that they can talk to the Trade Federation. You look at A New Hope, the Tantive 4 is being attacked by Vader and his ship, and we know nothing about this at this point because of when it was released. And that's where I think Rogue One did a good job of building up to,
they had that tense, they had that really awesome scene with Darth Vader going through that hallway. Like, I guess that would have obviously been before this, because he has to chase them again, because they do get away. If you've seen Rogue One, you know the scene we're talking about. Yeah. With Darth Vader just wrecking house over there through that hallway.
Right, and I mean, you start A New Hope with these random characters, because the first people we see, other than the Rebel pilots, are C-3PO and R2. And the first words spoken in Star Wars are from C-3PO. So we don't know at this point, if you had watched it like me, where you watched The Phantom Menace first, you would know who 3PO was. But if you didn't, then back then it's just like these robots are talking.
If you think about it, it's kind of weird to start off with robot, because they are technically minor characters, or at least C-3PO in a way is like a minor character. Right. R2 plays like
little
a bigger
did they
role
know they would become a bigger.
Well, I mean, they're like the comic relief, but they're also like they do have at least R2. Like C-3PO is just there, kind of stumbling around sometimes, but he's helpful too.
But I mean, just the way they did that, and then they build into we don't even see Luke until after 3PO and R2 escape the Tantive 4 and land on Tatooine. Then they do the whole sequence where they go their separate ways, find their way back. Then we see Luke, because Luke's buying 3PO and R2 from the Jawas, which is convenient. But, and then the whole thing where R2 runs away because he's looking for Obi-Wan. And then Obi-Wan ends up rescuing Luke, who chased after R2, and all of this builds. And they meet Han at Mos Eisley Spaceport, so it was just, and for what it was back in the 70s, with the technology they had, I think this was a really good movie. And I've always said the originals, and I'm sure many people agree, the originals are definitely better than anything else.
The prequel trilogy
in the series.
Or the sequel trilogy.
However, A New Hope isn't my favorite of the originals, but we'll get into that when we talk about the other two. Yeah. I'll explain why. But overall, I really enjoy A New Hope, and if I'm gonna recommend Star Wars to somebody who hasn't seen it, start with the original trilogy, then go back and watch the other ones. Because if you start with A Phantom Menace, you're probably not going to get into it as much
and
as...
it didn't have a lot of, like, I think there was, like, what, one or two, like, actual Jedi fights in that.
Right.
I mean, the episode 4, like, did a good job of establishing it, like, right from the get-go. Like you said, we're introduced to characters we don't know yet. There's some kind of plans that Princess Leia has. Like, we don't know, like, what's the Death Star? Like, what is
we
this?
didn't even know who Princess Leia was.
We don't know who
this
she
point.
is. Yeah. So it was good. It did a good way of, like, I mean, we didn't know who Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were. If you hadn't seen, like,
but
we
I
seen
mean,
Qui-Gon in any other movie.
To start a movie like that though, with 3PO and R2 and then the Darth Vader busting through the door, you know, it's just.
So in terms of comparing those two, definitely the A New Hope was better than the Phantom Menace.
Definitely.
But, yeah. Now we'll get into Star Wars Episode 7.
Yay.
The Force has risen, or whatever it's called. The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
yes.
I know.
You know, as a Star Wars fan, right? When I hear, because Revenge of the Sith was the last one that came out, which was Episode 3 technically. It was the last one released until Episode 7, and so. When I heard that Episode 7 was coming out, I got so excited. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. You know, they showed the trailers. It had the main characters. It had it had Han. It had Chewie. It had Leia. It had Luke, kind of.
Yeah.
And then all these new characters also, and it picked up 40 years after. After the events of Return of the Jedi. Which was Episode 6. So the galaxy has changed a lot since then, and they have the new First Order now instead of the Empire. And I heard that they were making this new Star Wars trilogy, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be exciting. And I went and saw The Force Awakens, and I was like, all right, this is what we're doing now. This is Star Wars now. And then we got those other two, and
we'll get into those in the next couple weeks. But I mean, for me too, looking back on it, I thought Force Awakens was a lot of fun. But when you think about it now, after having seen like Episode 4, the similarities and parallels between these two movies are present. Like, it starts off with someone's looking for plans that R2 happens to have.
BB-8 in The Force Awakens.
In this movie, though, they're looking for Luke Skywalker. In the first one, they're looking for Leia Skywalker, essentially, or at least the Death Star plans. You got a new droid introduced, just like we did in the... I mean, they still had the old characters, like Han Solo and everything,
R2 were still in it.
When you look back at these two movies, it seems like Episode 7 tried to be Episode 4 again. Tried to sort of recreate it with slightly new plot and a slightly new twist on things,
and obviously new characters
but I think it was just trying to be the Episode 4 for a new generation, rather than being its own thing to get new people into Star Wars, to want to go back and there were other Star Wars movies before this. That's why it's called Episode 7. Well, this was epic, maybe I'll go back and check these ones out, and then you'll want to go back. I don't think they did that. I mean, it was a good movie, and it did have, like, good things about it. But when you think about, like, I guess before putting Episode 8 and 9 aside for now, like, before those came out, I thought it would have been a good, like, they could have branched off with so many different things in so many different ways with the next two that it would have been different by the time you got to Episode 9. But I feel like, at first, just thinking back to it, Episode 7 seems like it's more of like an Episode 4 with a couple extra new things in there. But other than that, it was an okay movie. I mean, it was better than the two movies after it. But I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan, you know how those two went. But I liked that it was, and it used the old characters not too heavily, I feel like. Like not like
Rise of Skywalker, where it literally brought back a villain from the past.
I mean, I liked that, like, they used Han Solo, but he wasn't in the whole movie. Like, he wasn't there at the beginning. He wasn't
the main person.
Luke Skywalker wasn't in it at all until the very end, because they were looking for him because he was in hiding, and they needed his help and things like that. Leia wasn't really there right away, so they used the new characters well and established who they are. Like, we know them, Rey and Finn and Poe. And then they brought in they did that well with bringing in the old characters to support the new characters, but then they went in complete reverse in the next few movies after that. But
and speaking of reverse, I like how in The Force Awakens they kind of did a reverse of what Han and Luke had to do in A New Hope, where they took Finn, who was a stormtrooper, and made him a rebel, or made him a member of the Resistance, whereas in A New Hope, when Han and Luke go to rescue Leia, they have to dress up as stormtroopers to invade the Death Star. So that was kind of a cool twist on things. Plus the fact that Adam Driver was playing Kylo Ren, who was the grandson of Darth Vader, which we find out later on in the movie that it is Han Solo and Leia's son, who is the main villain. So they keep the family aspect, and you get the notion that the evil that was in Vader was passed down to Kylo Ren. And so it was that family aspect, and he had the cool mask with the voice changer and the triple bladed lightsaber, if you will, with the two spikes that come out on the side. Basically a sword. And it was really cool, and it was the first time we actually saw somebody block like an energy blast from a rifle or from a blaster using the Force. Like, he just stopped the blast dead in the air. Yeah. And then let it go later once he was gone. But like, that was the first time we saw that. And so we got this new power of Kylo Ren not really being a Sith, but being really powerful with the dark side of the Force, that he can do certain things, because as Palpatine says, the dark side of the Force is a pathway to abilities that some consider to be unnatural. And we see that with Kylo Ren, and we learn about this mysterious being that's called Supreme Leader Snoke, and we don't know who he is. Turns out he's a nobody, you don't find that out. Turns out in the next movie we find out who Snoke is. Snoke is just Snoke, and he's just here, and it had nothing to do with anything, really.
See, what this movie did do a good job with, though, is, like, if this was the first Star Wars movie somebody saw, it leaves you wondering, just like Episode 4 did, like, okay, who are these people? What's going on?
Right.
Like, who is this Darth Vader? Who is Luke and Obi-Wan? Right. Like, in Episode 4, they mentioned how, they all have a history. Like, he's like, I used to work with, or I was a good friend of your father's, or whatever. Or I knew your father back in the Clone Wars. Then you're wondering, what's the Clone Wars? And things like that. That's where the lore pushes you to want to watch the previous movies before that. That's why the prequel trilogy, I mean, it had its flaws, but it was still, you didn't need it, but it's there for people who want to know the origins. And then Episode 7 did a good job of, like, introduce these new characters, bring in the old ones, but now we're wondering, okay, well, who is Han Solo and Leia? What is the significance? Who's Darth Vader? Like, why is he the grandson of Darth Vader? Who is this Darth Vader guy? Is Han Vader's son, or is Leia his daughter? And who's this Luke Skywalker character that they're looking for, and things like that. So that kind of did good with that as well, making you want to go back and watch the ones before that, which is what you kind of want to do with something like this that has a lot of lore in it. Right. So I like that it did that well.
I also like the similarities between Rey and Luke. You take somebody from a desert planet. In Luke's case, it was Tatooine. In Rey's, it was Jakku. Nobody wants to go back to Jakku, but, they do. But you take somebody who had nothing to do with this world, in a way, because Luke grew up as a moisture farmer, just living his life like that with his aunt and uncle, knowing nothing about the Jedi or any of this stuff. And ended up being one of the greatest Jedi, ever. And then Rey, who is just a scavenger on Jakku, ends up realizing that she's more important in the in this universe than she thought. There's
another parallel, and then of course the parallel of a big this case it's Star Killer base, and in Episode 4 it was the Death Star. They're kind of the same thing essentially, but
both get destroyed.
it did establish its own kind of new,
right,
like new era of Star Wars, or like new lore and everything else. But I mean, there are similarities between the two movies. But if you were to pick one of the three of these, I'd pick it. Probably Episode 4 was the best one.
Yeah.
Just because I've seen it. If I had seen 7 first, like maybe some kids these days probably did. That was probably their first time seeing Star Wars. So I mean, I probably would have picked that, not knowing anything else about what happened. I probably would have said that was the best one. But because I know what everything is and stuff, I'm going with Episode 4 as the better of the 3 origin stories in these trilogies.
Right.
Which one do you think?
I mean, because I grew up, Phantom Menace came out in 99. I was born in 97, so I grew up with the 1, 2, and 3. And you would figure that I would like the Phantom Menace more than like the originals or the sequels. However, I agree that A New Hope is the best, but I do still have a soft spot for the Phantom Menace, because it is the first Star Wars movie that I watched that really kind of got me interested in it. But overall, the original trilogy I think is going to end up being better throughout these comparisons, anyways. But I would go, I think, A New Hope, Phantom Menace, and then The Force Awakens. I didn't hate The Force Awakens.
I didn't either. But
I wish they would have followed up with the next two and made those better. But we'll talk about those in the next video. So that's the order I would put these movies in.
So let us know what you guys think down in the comments section. Which of the 3 opening movies to the Star Wars trilogies did you like the most? Whether it was The Phantom Menace, A New Hope, or The Force Awakens. And also be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. In the next coming weeks, we'll be talking about the second movies in the trilogy and then the third movies in the trilogy, before we do something special for the week of Star Wars Day, which would be May 4th. Right. So keep an eye out for that as well. If you're a Star Wars fan, thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.
Bye, guys.
Subscribe.